ManuS, and welcome back to the next part in the MTG Arena set review for Ravnica Allegiance, with the second part of the green cards before we move on to the multicolor cards. As usual, before we get started, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the notification icon to not miss out on future content if you haven't yet, and yeah, please consider whitelisting YouTube on your ad block to help support the free content. And now on to the cards. Alright, first off we have Regenesis, 5 mana instant. We get to return up to 2 target permanent cards from our graveyard to our hand. I think in Constructed this is way too clunky and situational, and even in Limited this is probably a bit too clunky and situational. I could imagine maybe some dedicated controlling deck, maybe in like the Gate control deck, where you have enough good permanents to return with this, that this could be a decent source of card advantage, but even there it seems a bit clunky and situational, but it might be playable. Next we have Root Snare. Not much needed to say, it's already in standard from another set, and there is a Fog deck that plays 4 of these, like a Band Control Turbo Fog Nexus deck, where it is essential, and yeah, in Limited, Fogs are pretty bad. They can be very situational sideboard cards against like Alpha Strike from aggressive decks if they have like a finisher, a one-time finisher that you can counter with this or stuff like that, but it's very fringe. Next we have Sagittar's Volley, your usual anti-flyer card. This is usually a sideboard card in Limited. This is a particularly nice example. It's a 3 mana plummet basically that in addition deals 1 damage to each flyer, and with so much afterlife in white decks, either be it in Orzhov or even the Azorius decks, this is really nice and can deal quite some splash damage to these tokens, and there might be one or the other small flyer aside from tokens that dies with this or gets finished off with this. So yeah, definitely a great sideboard card, but usually not main deckable. Not a constructed card, obviously. Next we have Rudy Caretaker. It's kind of an interesting take on a ramp unit. It's a 1 mana 0/3 defender, so it blocks fairly well. In Constructed this is going to be a bit too weak, but in order to make mana you have to tap an untapped creature you control, so it basically requires 2 creatures to make 1 mana, which is a pretty hefty cost, but this seems like a nice option in some Limited decks, mainly more controlling decks like the Gate control deck, where this can fix all your colors and also provides a nice early blocker that you can play off curve on turn 2 together with your second Gate, for example. So in that deck it seems really nice. Outside of that I don't think your usual Gruul or Simic deck really wants this. Next we have Sauroform Hybrid. Not a constructed card either, but the best common 2-drop in the format. A 2 mana 2/2 is rock solid in most Limited formats, and one that later for 6 mana turns into a 6/6 effectively with haste is amazing, since at a certain point this is going to be blank, so it's almost going to be as if it wasn't there. Sure, it has some value for jump blocking or gang blocking, but effectively it's not really there anymore, and then on 6 mana you basically make it come back as a 6/6 effectively, making this better than a 6 mana 6/6, which is already an okay Limited card, and then having like a 6 mana 6/6 haste sort of for free attached to your 2 mana 2/2 is amazing. And yeah, premium card, pick as many as you can early and play them all. Next we have Suhana Wayfinder. It's a 2 mana 2/1, and when it enters the battlefield you look at the top 4 cards of your library and you may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put it on top of your library, and the rest at the bottom, on the bottom in a random order. So yeah, nothing too fancy here, but 2 mana 2/1 is an okay 2-drop, and it basically makes sure that you find land if what you want or need to draw is another land, or gives you a decent creature if you want some gas. So it has some nice utility. It's not too great though, but it's a decent playable, I would think, in Limited. Clearly not a constructed card though. Next we have Steeple Creeper. That's a pretty sweet one, as long as you have blue in limited. Also clearly not a constructed card, but in limited, as long as you have blue mana to activate the ability and give it flying later in the game, it's actually a pretty solid 3-drop. Normally, like 3 mana 4/2s aren't very good in limited because they trade down a lot. But this gives you some really nice way to break stalls and finish off an opponent later in the game, as long as your deck has some blue mana to activate it, either be it a couple gates or just being in Simic. So yeah, if you have blue, put it in your deck. If you don't have blue, don't put it in your deck. Next we have Stoney Strengths. You put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, and you get to untap that creature for 1 mana. So the buff is obviously not that big, so it won't always help with sizing to a point where your creature survives theirs. But first of all, there are a bunch of nice synergies with +1/+1 counters. There's like the 5-cost Cruel uncommon that eats +1/+1 counters and deals 2 damage somewhere. You can just basically, with that, Stony Strengths turns into a shock, which is pretty nice. There are some adapt abilities that you can activate with this on the cheap side, and it's just a nice trick. The fact that it only costs 1 makes it very flexible. I like the card quite a bit. It's a bit low impact, but it's also so flexible and cheap that it's nice to have at least 1 usually in your deck. But I could be wrong, maybe it's a bit too low impact, but I just really like the surprise factor and flexibility that it provides for just 1 mana in limited. Next we have Sylvan Brush Strider. Nothing fancy, just an okay 3-drop, 3 mana 3/2. Potential to trade down with a 2-drop is a bit annoying, but yeah, when it enters the battlefield you gain 2 life, which is a nice bonus. So all in all, a fine 3-drop to fill out your curve if you need more 3-drops. Nothing to pick highly or be excited about though. Next we have Territorial Bore. Another grizzly bear with a bit of an upside. If you play a creature with power 4 or greater, Territorial Bore gets +1/+1 and vigilance until end of turn, making it an above average 2-drop, I would say, in Gruul and Simic if you have a bunch of big guys. So definitely a nice 2-drop to pick up if you need 2-drops. Next we have Titanic Brawl. Basically, most of the time this should be an instant prey upon, basically, which makes it a bit better than quite a bit better than regular prey upon. But it can also be worse if you don't have a +1/+1 counter. It suddenly becomes pretty clunky. So a decent card for sure, but probably not as good as some people might think it is. But yeah, the fact that it is an instant means that you can blow out gang blocks and stuff in combat, which is a huge upgrade over Prey Upon. So definitely much better than Prey Upon, but still only decent, I think. Then we have Tower Defense. Creatures you control get +0/+5 and reach until end of turn. Probably not main deckable, just way too defensive, but seems like another okay sideboard card against a lot of flyers, or when there's a lot of combat going on, where this could blow out the opponent. It is fairly cheap for what it does, so that's a plus. Next we have Trollbred Guardian. That's a pretty powerful 5-drop. First of all, 5 mana 5/5 is already pretty solid. Giving all your other bigger creatures with +1/+1 counters on it trample is a nice bonus, and then turning this into a 7/7 trample the next turn for 3 mana is a pretty good deal. So definitely better than Renthorn. Renthorn already is very solid, and this is a pretty much premium 5-drop, I would say. Next we have Wilderness Reclamation. In Standard and even probably past Standard, this card seems pretty powerful and has a lot of potential to be broken and get broken by people doing powerful stuff with it. We'll have to see how it shakes out, but this card is has the potential to be a mistake, and we'll see how it turns out, because these kinds of like free mana and letting you untap the way this lets you do it is super powerful and can get out of hand real quick. So we'll have to see how it pans out, but definitely a powerful effect. In Limited, however, I think this is usually not playable, just needs too much dedicated deck building to really take advantage of. And last but not least, we have Wrecking Beast. It's a 7 mana 6/6 trample with Riot, so it's either a 7/7 trample or a 6/6 trample haste, another one of those Riot creatures that even in Limited more often probably will end up being a 6/6 trample haste rather than a 7/7 trample. But yeah, 7 mana is a lot, so I'm not too excited about this in Limited. I think 7 mana is a bit much, so unless you desperately need like a way to finish the game because you can't reliably win otherwise, I would probably leave that on the bench more often than not. Okay, this concludes the review of the second part of the green cards. As usual, let me know in the comments what you think, hit the like button if you enjoy it, share it with your friends, and of course subscribe to the channel for more if you haven't yet. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow with the first part of the multicolor cards, and we are soon nearing the end of the series. I'm also streaming more and more MTG Arena lately, so make sure to check out my stream and social media over here to not miss out on anything. You can also find a link to all of that in the description, including my Discord server where you can hang out together and stuff like that. Alright, that's it again for this time. I'm your host ManuS. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!